Hi everyone, my name's Jaden Bede and welcome to the Legal Intern Diaries, Montana Edition, Episode 3. If you haven't been able to catch the prior 2 episodes, I really do recommend that you go check that out, as well as if you have not yet been able to check out my ebook, which, as a reminder, is essentially the outline of content that we follow in these podcast episodes. I really recommend that you go read them. The podcasts are meant to be supplemental to the ebook, and all of the podcasts move in order of the ebook, and so you may not have context on the things that I'm talking about in this episode if you weren't able to watch the other ones or haven't referenced the text either. So I definitely recommend that you go check that out. All other episodes and the ebook can all be found on my website, which is www.406legalinternships.com. I want to take a moment just to clarify. I know in the last episode I had said that in the next episode, being this one, I would be sitting down and talking with Swazig, who is the pre-law advisor at the University of Montana, and kind of talking to her and getting some perspective for you guys from her on legal internships. However, I was not able to film that podcast quite yet, and so I thought that I would make sure that I got another one out for you guys moving along in the content of the book. Hopefully that podcast will be out next, but I definitely don't want to make any promises and change it again, but a podcast with Swazig will be coming out in the near future. In this episode, we're going to be covering chapters 6 and 7 of my ebook, A Guide to Legal Internships in Montana. Chapter 6 will cover how to make the best of your legal internship. Chapter 7 will cover overcoming challenges within your legal internship, both of which I think are incredibly important chapters. Obviously, you have to obtain a legal internship before either of these are relevant. So again, if you haven't done so, or you haven't watched those prior episodes and don't have an idea of how to do that, that's probably a better place to start. So I definitely recommend that you check those out. Let's start with chapter 6, making the best of your legal internship. This starts on page 36 of the ebook for reference. The first thing I'd like to talk about in reference of making the best of your legal internship is your mindset. I think that no matter what, you're not going to be able to learn anything, you're not going to take anything away from your legal internship if you don't have a positive mindset. And so I think that that's a really pivotal piece coming in to have right off the bat. You need to be hardworking. You need to be willing to work outside of your comfort zone always. Seeking discomfort is good and promotes personal growth. And so having that mindset from the get-go that it may not be comfortable, you're going to have to work pretty hard, is something that I think will make you successful later. You also need to chase every opportunity that you can for that professional growth. Don't be complacent and just happy with where you are having a legal internship. Always seek better opportunities, always be trying to increase your value to whatever firm or organization you're working for in order to not only better yourself, but better the workplace that you're in. Next, let's talk a little bit about networking. Networking is really important, and it's something that I've talked about a little bit in both of the prior podcast episodes in a little bit of different context, but it's really important that you are connecting with not only your colleagues within whatever organization you've taken an internship in, but also outside of that. I think that some of the best connections you'll make are the ones where you're interacting with other firms, staff from other firms, interns from other firms, and those connections can be just as valuable as the ones you're making within the firm you're working for. I also really encourage you, no matter what, to be really authentic and true to you. And the reason that is because you don't want to perpetuate that you're something that you're not. And also, if you're not authentic to yourself, you're probably not learning in an authentic way that's going to translate very well to your professional career. And so making sure that you're authentic will not only make that networking and that relationship building that much easier because you're being true to who you are. It'll be a lot easier, and it likely will produce more fruit and more positive benefits at the end of the day. I really encourage you to attend firm events, if any. Some firms don't host very many events, mine doesn't, and so that's not necessarily something that's a huge option for me, but if your firm is one that does host a lot of events, whether that just be like a staff get-together, a potluck, a Christmas party, I really encourage you to attend those events. Sometimes they're during the workday, so it would be kind of odd if you didn't, but Even if they're not, I definitely think that these are great opportunities where people kind of let their guard down. There's no other variables of the stress of the work environment kicking in, and it's really a great opportunity to connect with your colleagues, especially in a more natural and authentic way. It's also really important that you remember who you are and what your place is in the firm, and that's an intern. And like it or not, interns are fairly low on the totem pole, and that means that you have to work twice as hard as some of the other people in order to make your mark. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but part of that is making sure that you're taking initiative and jumping in where it's needed in the firm. And the reason that that applies to networking is because if people look at you and see you as a hardworking person who truly wants to help not only them, but the firm as a whole, they're going to see you as a much better person, and that's going to make those connections that much better. A big part of networking is not just meeting people and building a relationship with them, but fostering a good one where that relationship moving forward is going to be mutually beneficial. And that can't happen if they don't know what type of worker you are, if they don't know what you're capable of. And so taking every opportunity to show anybody that is really important, but especially, of course, the attorneys or any supervisor you have. I think the most important thing, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in depth later in this episode, but the most important thing you can do is find a mentor. And the only way to do that is through networking. You have to meet people and kind of learn who not only is the type of attorney you want to be and exhibits the type of skill and ethic and all of those different things that you want to, but they also have to want to mentor you as well. Like that's a mutual relationship. And so the only way to do that and to show them who you are and for them to show you who they are is to network. I mean, sometimes firms are big, sometimes firms are small, and that's a lot easier to do. And so dependent on where you're at, of course, that's situational, but making an effort to get to know people and network with them in the firm will make finding a mentor and a good mentor that suits you best for your future career just that much easier. It'll also make it a lot easier for them to get to know you and for that mentorship relationship to kind of flourish. Also, as just kind of a side note, a really important thing to me in my internship has been being able to accompany my mentors, being the attorneys I work for, to court. Those are some of the biggest learning opportunities for me, is when I get to go and actually see it happen in real time, court proceedings, and sometimes even be a part of them in the preparation for them. But had I not networked with the attorneys and shown them my skill, stepped up to the plate when necessary, and built that mentorship relationship with them, I don't know that they would take me to court. And not because they don't want to, but just because they don't think about it. It's definitely something that takes away from their focus and their time, and sometimes even as a result, their compensation. And so it's definitely a little bit of a sacrifice for them to bring you under their wing. And so showing that you deserve that time is important, but equally important is your learning opportunity. And that's something that you need to make sure that you're prioritizing as well. And so giving your best effort and putting your best foot forward for them at all times is pivotal in reaching that end and being able to do things like attend court proceedings. I remember the first time I accompanied one of the attorneys to court. It was really scary because I didn't know what to expect. I've talked about it a little bit on other podcasts because I was a little bit embarrassed because I didn't know the etiquette, which again, if you haven't watched that podcast, go back and watch it. You need to know etiquette before then. I should have known it. And I really learned a lot though. In that court proceeding, I saw how the judge thought, what the judge's role was, and this happened to be a criminal case, so we were the defense. And so not only did I see how the judge kind of led the hearing and what went into it, but I also understood my client's point of view and was able to kind of see how the prosecution differed from that, and just different, lots of different things like that you wouldn't necessarily get experience with or have perspective on unless you actually got to experience it. So making sure that you're putting your best foot forward and reaching the end of being able to be taken along with the attorneys and that they want to do that and you're getting that experience is important. Obviously, a really big part of networking is building relationships, and that's probably no surprise to everyone. Yeah, thank you, Captain Obvious. But it is. And so if you have that mindset that you're trying to build a mutually beneficial relationship, I think that that's important. Equally important is showing initiative towards that end, though, like actively showing that you are interested and enthusiastic about the interpersonal, showing that you're enthusiastic and interested in those interpersonal relationships within the firm, that you're not just there to gain something, essentially, even though you are there to gain something, but you're also there to give as well. And so showing that initiative towards not only building those relationships, but showcasing that will make them stronger. Additionally, building those relationships allows for opportunity for feedback. So that includes mentorship or even just relationships with your other coworkers, support staff, things like that can give great opportunity for feedback, because not only do you trust what they have to say because you've built a relationship with them and you know that they at least know you to whatever degree in which you've shown them, but you also probably trust them and trust what they have to say and know that they care about you too. And that any feedback they have to give is meant to make you better. And then you can truly reflect on that and then make any needed changes and move forward as a better professional. I talked a little bit about professional development in the last episode, and this is a big part of that is feedback, but you're not going to be comfortable receiving feedback and they're not going to be comfortable giving feedback unless you've built that underlying relationship with them. I know for me, I'm constantly seeking feedback. I always want to make myself better, always want to be improving, but a lot of the time in any sort of like application process, in a job, sometimes there's not as much opportunity for feedback as you would hope there would be. Once I obtained my internship, there was a lot of room for feedback. My attorneys believe in just like giving feedback as things come up, and so to make me better. And my attorneys believe in giving feedback as things come up, as I have a mistake or as there's something that I didn't know. They definitely prioritize that because it prioritizes my growth and makes me better. And by making me better, it makes me better for them. So I can contribute, so that I can contribute more value to their firm as well. And so I know that feedback for me has always been really important, but it's not always easy. If you're getting feedback from someone that you don't really know or that you don't really feel like understands you, that feedback can be a little bit unsupported or maybe not in the right context, or you just don't feel like it's supported or in the right context, which I would caution you against having that frame of mind no matter when feedback is given to you. I think it's always important to get feedback. Whether you choose to implement change or not is your choice, but getting that feedback and really thinking about it's important. But with that said, I am not going to sit here and tell you that it isn't hard. One of the first times that I got feedback from my mentor, he essentially told me that I had done discovery responses completely wrong. And I could just tell that he was super disappointed. And that like broke my heart, because I'm definitely a perfectionist, definitely someone who doesn't want to mess anything up, especially something that could affect the case and the clients. And so I was definitely pretty heartbroken and embarrassed by that. But instead of, being upset and even like, I didn't think he was wrong. His feedback made a lot of sense and he took the time to walk me through it. And I really appreciated that, which isn't always the case. But I sat and I, really internalized it and reflected and implemented the changes that he essentially had told me needed to be. And I moved on from that, and I look back and it's one of the best experiences ever, because now I don't make those mistakes anymore. And he can be confident that I'm not going to make those mistakes anymore because he knows that I internalized and reflected on it. And then that cross applies to his mentorship through any other type of legal writing or any project I'm helping with, because he's confident that if I do something wrong, that I'm going to reflect on it and make it better and not do it again. And so that confidence, me and him, being that I know he'll be honest with me and cares about me and cares about my learning, but also his confidence in me is a really important relationship that I really value. And so I think that, everything that I've talked about up until this point in this episode has been a part of building that. And I think that no matter what legal internship you decide to pursue, whether it's at the state or it's private or anything in between. No matter where you're working, you always have a supervisor, and you should always have a mentor, and you should be reflecting on that feedback and building that relationship so that all of that is not only positive, but helps your growth as well as the growth of whatever organization you're in. The next thing I want to talk about is standing out as an intern. And this is something that can turn negative very quickly. And so I think it's really important to keep an open mind and really be methodical about how you choose to stand out as an intern. Standing out's important, especially at a big firm. At a smaller firm where there's just a couple interns and your roles are fairly different depending on who you're working under, it may not be as important to differentiate yourself, although I do think that you should always be trying to make your mark and show the best of yourself to the attorneys, because who knows, it could end up in a future job for you. Like in my experience, I mean, there was no other interns for a really long time. Only more recently have we gotten any more interns, and so I didn't really have to necessarily stand out comparatively to the other interns, but I still wanted to prioritize standing out in the attorneys' minds because I wanted to make sure that I am cultivating that positive relationship. This is a networking opportunity ultimately for me, and honestly, I'd really love to work at this firm in the future, and so standing out to them now and continuing to stand out will hopefully make me a standout candidate at the end of the day if and when I apply for a position post obtaining my JD and passing the bar. With that said, it can turn negatively very quickly. Let's say I worked at a big firm and there was a lot of interns. I mean, that competitiveness can either be a great thing that pushes everyone to be better, or it can be a bad thing that puts people down and creates negative interpersonal and work environment relations. And so you have to be really careful with how you choose to stand out and make your mark. It can't be about other people, it has to be about you, being the best that you can be and standing out in the room as opposed to being better than others. I think that that's an important distinction to make. And so just being really aware of how you're choosing to stand out is important. However, I also think you need to choose to stand out. In whatever capacity that is. You need to decide what you're good at and improve on the things that you're not, and find out what's valuable to the attorneys at the firm or organization that you're working for, and really study up on that and improve if you lack in those areas. And I mean, those should be the things that you're focusing on, is making yourself better in order to better the firm and to reach your goals and all of those different things. It should be about professional development, personal growth, as opposed to comparatively being just better than everyone around you. Because honestly, you will likely come out on top if you're the only one or the one who has most effectively pursued that personal growth. And so the two can happen at the same time, but the path in which you get there, the means to that ends, are very important, because if you do it wrong, it could possibly damage your reputation, damage the reputation of others, and have a trickle-down effect and create just a bad work environment that you don't want to be a part of, or that others don't want to be a part of, or even that others don't want you to be a part of. So being careful and being humble are definitely important aspects of that. Obviously, in order to do this, you have to have a strong work ethic. That's something that I've said over and over again, and it's really easy to say that you have a strong work ethic, but you need to show that. Your actions speak louder than words, and I know that that's probably cheesy or, cliche or whatever you may think, but it's true. I mean, you need to show the attorneys, yourself, and your coworkers that you are willing to work hard to reach a goal, to reach an end, to make yourself better and to then better the firm. And so that work ethic, like, you always have to be thinking about how to get better, and you always have to be working towards that. You can't be complacent and expect to be successful and to stand out in the firm, because you won't. Coupled with that strong work ethic needs to be being able to take initiative, being self-motivating. If you aren't able to motivate yourself and do work for the firm without someone standing behind you and giving you a to-do list and driving you in the right direction at all times, you probably won't make it very far, because quite frankly, nobody has time to walk you through it and hold your hand. And that may sound harsh, because of course you're an intern and you aren't going to know how to do everything, but being self-motivated and trying to teach yourself and find resources to help you along, and being able to kind of move projects along, help move cases along independently, are standout skills. That's not something everyone has. And so if you want to stand out, you got to have a strong work ethic, you got to be self-motivating, you got to be able to take initiative. Something that I think is undervalued in standing out as an intern is having some specialized skills outside of the legal profession. And largely that's because usually those skills can cross-apply to the legal profession because it's just such a vast field, but also because it makes you a more well-rounded individual, which usually translates well. In the last episode, I talked about the testimonials that I have received from attorneys and firm owners here in Missoula, primarily, but also across the state of Montana. And so they all express a lot of different things and some commonalities, but one in particular, being my mentor, one thing that he said was that he really wants interns that have skills outside of the legal field or have experience outside of the legal field. And he says that that's because he wants them to be well-rounded. And I think that that's something that I exhibited and is something that obviously he must have valued in me. And so I'll go a little bit into that. Being what I mean by having a skill outside of the legal field is that, we all have undergrads, right? Whether you've already received your undergrad, whether you're pursuing it right now, there's things that you're doing prior to law school and prior to knowing the law. And all of those things make up who you are as a person, as a learner, etc. And those don't just disappear and not matter anymore once you become an attorney. They're of course going to help you along the way in whatever way that they can relate to what you're doing. And so having a skill set that is unique and can not only maybe even benefit the firm in the interim, but also benefit you as an attorney in the long term are important and are things that make you stand out, set you apart from others, because you likely do not have overlapping skills in that way with other people. And it's something that an employer is going to look for. Like, they want someone who brings value. They don't need a bunch of people who can all do the same thing. They need a bunch of people who can do different things, some overlapping things, and that ultimately can all work together for the benefit and value of the firm. So let's talk a little bit about me. My undergrad is business, specifically marketing and communications. And originally, as I talked about in the first episode, I applied for a marketing internship at this firm in order to get my foot in the door. However, even had I not applied for that in the beginning, I have often been told by our attorneys that they probably would have asked me to do and handle a lot of the marketing for the firm because that's something that I have a background in and am educated in, and is value that I can bring the firm that nobody else brings, or nobody else has the training to bring, and is something that truly does help it outside of the legal sphere. Now, I definitely don't mean to perpetuate that marketing has no place in the legal field, because of course it does. Individual attorneys need to market themselves, but also sometimes cases involve marketing, and marketing can sometimes prove negligence. And I mean, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty about it, but it definitely has a role too. However, in the context that I'm talking about right now, being to be able to stand out in the interim as a legal intern, being able to handle their social media and be able to provide some marketing insights just for the running of the firm, because of course it's a business, is something that is valuable to them. And I think it's ultimately something that made me stand out in the beginning. So if you have something like that, it doesn't necessarily have to be your undergrad, but if there's something you're good at that could possibly add value to the firm, show that skill, offer that skill, be willing to use it in addition to your other duties and the things that you're pursuing for your growth. Because I mean, it definitely took me to where I am. And so I definitely couldn't stress more the need to showcase those skills if you have them and that it's valuable. Now, let's say you don't feel like you have any, which I doubt. I think if you think critically about it, you probably do have some unique skills to bring to the table. However, let's say you truly don't, that's okay. You just need to be able to stand out in other ways by working really hard and growing as a professional and being the best that you can be in the areas in which you do know. However, I again would argue that that's probably not the case. You probably do have things that add value that are not in the legal sphere. So definitely be a little bit more introspective on that if you're just kind of thinking to yourself right now, I don't have anything like that, because that's probably not true. Again, another part of standing out is seeking feedback. I mean, that's going to be a theme throughout all of these different episodes, is that you need to seek feedback. How are you supposed to get any better if you don't have feedback? I mean, it's a very clear concept to me. So if you're not someone who is receptive to feedback, you got to get over that. Or you maybe should choose a different profession, because you're not going to become skilled if you cannot refine those skills. And part of refining your skills is getting feedback and knowing when you're wrong. If you don't know you're doing anything wrong, how are you supposed to fix it? This is a stressful profession. And I think that that's kind of the next thing I want to talk about a little bit, and it may sound bad, it may not be something anybody looks forward to, but ultimately this is a stressful profession. And an attorney doesn't need an intern who's going to freak out and crumble when things get hard. They don't. They need someone who's going to step up to the plate and who's going to be able to handle it. And although I would acknowledge that we're all human, right? Like, we all get scared, we all get nervous, we all have emotions that sometimes cloud our judgment, we all have bias, etc. You have to know how to effectively manage that stress that perpetuates all of those different emotions, and how to be able to move forward in situations like that. If you are someone who is a clutch player and can handle stress effectively, that will make you stand out to the attorneys, and that's someone they're going to want on their team. If you are not reliable in any given situation, then they will be hesitant to use you in any given situation, especially the bigger cases, which are the ones that you're going to learn the most from. So make sure that you know how to manage stress effectively in an outward way, being controlling and regulating your work product under those situations. However, also for yourself. I mean, you don't want to be unhappy. This is a stressful profession. If you can't handle that stress effectively, you will not be happy in it. So if you're not someone who handles stress well, you either need to work on that or possibly choose a different profession. And I don't mean to sound blunt or like a negative Nelly, but ultimately, like, it's for your own good to have those stress management tools. And if you don't, and you are not willing to work on them, then you won't be happy. And nobody wants that, especially after the incredible amount of debt you will likely incur as a result of going to law school, because that would be a huge waste of money if you end up burning out in your first 5 years because you don't know how to manage your stress effectively. And likely that'll trickle over into your job performance, not only now as a legal intern, but also then as an attorney. Finally, it's not always about work product standing out. Standing out can also be about your passion for the law, how much you care, how authentic you are about that passion and that care, because I'll tell you what, I said this in the last episode, the attorney can smell it a mile away if you're being inauthentic. It's part of their job. So being authentic, showing your passion, showing that you care, and being patient are all definitely virtues that will serve you well in being able to stand out. Because if you're none of those things and you're the opposite of those things, it won't matter how many of the other boxes I've talked about you've checked. It won't seem authentic, you won't seem like you care, and it likely will not be a super effective end to your goals. The final thing I want to discuss in chapter 6 is the final thing I want to discuss in regards to chapter 6, making the most of your legal internship, is documenting your skills. I think that this is something that people forget to do and is interesting to me, because how are you supposed to remember every single thing you've accomplished throughout a job, especially one as stressful and as full and as busy as a legal internship, or even once you actually progress to being a lawyer? And so every skill that you've learned, I mean, you have those skills now, and it may not come right to your mind, the things that you've done along the way. And so making sure that you're documenting every skill that you're earning, every task that you've mastered, and all of those different things, whether it's on your resume, whether you're just keeping a list, whatever that looks like for you organizationally. And there's some examples in the book if you want to go look at it. It's in the end of chapter 6, which starts on page 36, the chapter does. If you don't document those things, you're not able to showcase them. And especially in a legal internship, usually the reason you're a legal intern is so that you can learn, build skills that you can showcase in order to obtain a successful career and then be successful in that career. In order to obtain a career and then be successful in that career. And for some of you, that may be trying to get into law school. And when you try to get into law school, you have to write a personal statement, you have to write a resume, and hopefully you're going to convey the skills that you've learned in your legal internship in order to show any law school that you're applying to, hopefully the Alexander Blewett School of Law at the University of Montana, what you've learned and what type of learner you can be, that you'll be successful in law school, that you'll be a successful lawyer. All of that's really important, but if you don't remember all that you did, like I can't tell you what I did when I first started my legal internship. I can't tell you everything I worked on. I can't tell you all the skills I've learned. Like, they're kind of innate to me now. I've been there for almost 2 years. And so had I not been keeping track of them and writing them down on my resume, I wouldn't necessarily remember them, whether that's legal research, legal writing, I mean, anything, any document that I know how to draft. I mean, all of those are important things to any admissions committee, any hiring committee, or anyone that you would be possibly showing those things to. So keeping track of it is really important. That was chapter 6. Now let's get into chapter 7, which is overcoming challenges. This is a chapter that I think is incredibly important and incredibly transparent, and is something that I definitely wanted to communicate effectively in this podcast series and in my ebook. And so if there's anything further you want me to dive into, please reach out to me. You can use the contact me page on my website, again, www.406legalinternships.com. In order to reach out to me, you can also comment on the video or any other means of messaging. Because I think that being able to overcome challenges in your internship will be the hardest thing you do and will be the most pivotal to your growth and moving forward as a legal professional. Again, I recommend that you go read this chapter. It'll give you some context. I'm not going to talk about everything or give you every example that is housed in there. It starts on page 45 of the ebook, which again can be found on my website. This is not comprehensive. There's definitely going to be a lot of challenges that I could never predict that you're going to face. Again, it's a hard field and you're learning, and that's going to present a unique set of challenges dependent on where you are, who you're interacting with. I mean, there's an incredible amount of variables there. And so never could I ever predict all of them for you, and I definitely can't counsel you on how to prepare for all of them, but I can give you some general ones, which are exhibited in the book, that I'm not going to go over in depth, but I would encourage you read them. And then some general ways that you can have some tools in your toolbox. Again, that analogy I used in the last episode, in order to combat those challenges. So let's reflect on a few common challenges in order to possibly help you mitigate them in the future. The first is just your limited experience. You're an intern, and the attorneys in the firm are going to know that. Or the organization you work for, they're going to know that. I mean, you're an intern for a reason, right? Because you want to learn, and you need to learn, because you really probably don't have too much of a basis. And if you do, fantastic, but there's always room to learn and grow. And so your limited experience is probably going to present some challenges, being that you don't know how to do everything, and you're going to do things wrong. So if you're a perfectionist like me, you're going to have to buttercup, because it's not going to be an easy ride. But preparing for that and knowing that you, and really internalizing that you're there to learn and that you need to be doing the best you can at all times, giving 110%, learning, improving, etc. But just knowing that you're not going to know everything and do everything perfect off the bat will definitely help to mitigate some of the fallout of those challenges that come along with that, and mitigate the challenges that come with that limited experience. Next is time management, and I have talked about this a ton in all 3 of these episodes, and it still reigns true that it is one of the most important skills that you're going to need, and will equally, if you don't have them and you don't have an effective way of managing your time, will present significant challenges for you that could result in some consequences. I mean, if you are not managing your time effectively, getting things done as you're asked, and you miss deadlines, that's going to be a big deal. And a bad one at that. And so making sure that you have effective time management strategies, whatever that looks like for you, whether it be keeping copious notes, having a calendar, sticking to that calendar religiously, reminders, pop-ups, whatever, you need to make sure that you're mitigating those challenges that come with time management by effectively, creating an environment in which you can excel in that time management. The next one is one that I didn't expect, and you may not necessarily either, or maybe it's not something you've thought about, but one of the biggest challenges that I guarantee you will face is office dynamics. I have met amazing people. I work with amazing people, but we're human and everything is not always fantastic all the time. We all have feelings, we all have ups and downs, and things happen. And with that said, that means that sometimes people are upset. Sometimes people are sad. Sometimes people are upset with you. Sometimes you make a mistake. Sometimes you hurt someone's feelings. I mean, those are the things that come with interpersonal relationships, which includes office dynamics. And making sure that you know how to navigate that effectively is important. And that's not something I can counsel you on. I definitely recommend that you at least read the guidance in the book that I give about it, but this is so situational that I don't think I can necessarily give blanket advice on it. But what I would counsel you to do is to be aware that those office dynamics can get a little messy and can present their own set of challenges. I think that you should always try and have compassion. You should always be cautious of how you're treating people, how you're coming off to others, and just make sure that you're contributing to a positive environment all the time or as often as humanly possible in order to mitigate those challenges. But those challenges will arise, and if you're not great with conflict, which I don't think you'd probably be becoming attorney if you weren't good with conflict, but let's say you're not, you might need to brush up on some mitigation strategies for conflict, especially in interpersonal relationships. Again, not to continue to, say the same thing over and over again, but feedback and being open to criticism are two very, very important topics. And I mean, I can't stress that enough. So that definitely cross applies here, because you're gonna meet your own set of challenges, not only like through that feedback process, but also if you don't implement that, if you are not receptive and you're not able to implement strategies to correct things that you've done wrong in accordance with feedback that you receive, it will present challenges for you. Like, obviously you're already being challenged, you're an intern, you don't know everything, you're probably doing some stuff wrong, which is a challenge in and of itself, especially if you're a perfectionist, but not being able to correct those things and be reflective and take feedback and criticism and then apply that feedback and criticism will also present some negative challenges. So be aware of that, and whatever that looks like for you, to be able to prepare for that, definitely make sure that you're putting some thought into it. The next two I think are incredibly important, but are not necessarily applicable to every person. But I would argue that they're at least applicable to people I've known. And so I think that they're worth talking about and touching on. The next is ethical dilemmas. That definitely can be a challenge in the workplace if an attorney, which this has never happened to me. My values align really well with the firm that I work for, and all of the attorneys that I work for are fantastic people and attorneys. They're fantastic at their job. And so I've never personally ran into an ethical dilemma with any of them. But I definitely think you should read about the ethical dilemmas in my book, because that does happen. There's going to be times when you don't agree with the attorney. There's also going to be times when you feel really awkward about representing somebody, especially if you're in the criminal world and they've done wrong. And usually you're going to be comparing that to your own personal values, and that can create some ethical dilemmas on the inside. Like, why should I help this person given what they've done? And things like that. And honestly, if that's your mindset, you definitely probably want to do some self-reflection into what type of law you should go into based on that perspective that you have about people. But that doesn't mean it's any less relevant and won't present a challenge as a legal intern, especially if your firm or organization does criminal law. And it can be present in the other types of law, but I think usually the bigger stuff that stands out to people that people take issue with is generally criminal acts. And so making sure that the firm that you're with aligns with your values is important at the outset. I talked about that in the previous episode. Because it mitigates the challenges later on with ethical dilemmas if you are confident in your attorneys and in the clients they choose to take and in the arguments they choose to bring. But let's say you're not. I mean, you got to know how to navigate that and really decide what you're going to do. Are you going to stay at that firm, and are you going to work on those cases, and are you able to put that aside and be effective in your support of that client and that attorney or not. And those are definitely unfortunate challenges to have, and that would be really difficult. And I've never been in that situation. I can't say exactly how you should handle it, but I definitely think that if you choose to mitigate it beforehand by ensuring that your values align with the firm you're working for and the attorneys you work for, it likely will not become an issue later. The final challenge that I think you should take issue with is work-life balance. And I said previously that I don't think that this necessarily applies to every person, because some people are really great with work-life balance just automatically. I am not that person. I'm not good at it. I'm definitely a hypocrite a little bit, sitting here telling you guys to have a positive work-life balance. Work-life balance presents challenges, and I think it's unique to every person. Like, what you're willing to put in and the sacrifices you're willing to make are unique to you, and the benefits and challenges of that are also unique to you. And so I don't pretend to sit here on my high horse and say that everyone needs to have a perfect work-life balance and that's the only way to be successful. I don't necessarily think that that's true, but I do think that a work-life balance can present its challenges. And so if you have been reflective for yourself, and I talked about this in a previous episode, if you truly reflect and decide what you want that work-life balance to be, what you need that work-life balance to be in order to make yourself successful, but also to protect yourself, your mental and emotional health, it can mitigate that challenge later if you're able to set up those boundaries clearly in the beginning. It's not something that I'm good at. I definitely would be categorized as a workaholic. I definitely forego opportunities and even sometimes my own sanity in order to continue to push and push and push, because I deeply believe in hard work and definitely a perfectionist. And those are good things a lot of the time, but they can be a flaw. I mean, there are times when I'm absolutely exhausted and cannot take care of myself in the ways that I need to because I am not prioritizing myself in the way that I probably should be. Whether that's even just like making sure I'm eating right, to, how many hours I'm spending at work, how much sleep I'm getting. I mean, that work-life balance can extend to your health as well. I mean, obviously you should prioritize what you need socially and emotionally, and all those different things, but also physically. And so making those considerations, really being introspective in what you need, and being able to then apply that to your career and set those clear boundaries and be firm on them is important, because if you don't, it will present some unique challenges like burnout. That's something that I've struggled with in the past and is not something that any legal intern is going to have the luxury of doing. And so if you don't mitigate it in the beginning, it's going to make it pretty darn hard for you. And I can say that from experience. Now let's talk about mitigating these challenges a little bit. Obviously, I've touched on it a little bit as I've gone through some of the more common challenges. But again, I want to stress that this isn't comprehensive. You're going to probably have to figure it out. And I'm confident that you can. If you've made it this far and you're going to be an attorney, you probably should be able to handle that. And if not, hopefully you have a great network of supporters and people that you can talk to who can kind of help you. A big thing is being adaptable and being flexible. Things are going to happen that you're not ready for. Again, that stress management is definitely important. But if you're flexible and you're able to adapt and willing to adapt, should make that process a little bit easier. Again, I already talked about time management strategies, but knowing yourself and implementing an effective one is incredibly important. Being an effective communicator, this helps you to communicate boundaries, your workload even sometimes. I think it kind of goes without saying that being able to communicate to your superiors, to your peers, will help to mitigate challenges, because if you just keep it in and you let it fester, those challenges are likely going to just grow. And so if you're not able to handle them effectively and communicate around them and fix them, as a result, they definitely will never get better. So positive communication, and again, your ability to do that and feel comfortable doing that, and their ability to feel comfortable receiving that, will likely be whatever that looks like, will be a product of whatever relation building that you've done, as we talked about a little while ago. And so again, all of this has a trickle down effect to each other. So making sure you're doing all of these things in whatever capacity that looks like for you and the organization/firm that you work for is super important, and reflecting on all of it to make sure that it's effective and it's what you want and all those different things so that you can be happy. I mean, that's ultimately what you want, right? You want to be happy and you want to be successful. And you won't be if you can't mitigate your challenges or do any of the other things we've talked about in this episode. Problem solving, I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer, can help with these challenges. I mean, being willing to come up with and fight for solutions and really care about what's happening and care about making it better is usually the first step in your ability to problem solve that, and then create that effective solution and implement it are kind of byproducts of that are also really important. Finally is ethical awareness and boundaries. I mean, of course, all of these things that I've spoken about before, whether it be challenges or even prior to that, all have an ethical element to them. I mean, this is the law. It all has some sort of ethical umbrella that is different for every person. Over the top of it, your perception of it is different. And so those ethical dilemmas that I spoke about, like, as long as you understand where your ethics lie and where your boundaries should be and all of those different things, you're able to communicate them and set those boundaries and use them in order to guide your choosing of a law firm and choosing of an internship and all of that. I mean, if you really lay the groundwork in your ethics and your standards and your boundaries, you shouldn't have a problem at all. But you may, and knowing yourself and being really in touch with your boundaries and your ethics is important to navigating that situation, because you never want to feel like you have to forego your ethics in order to be successful. Like, that's not a good place to put yourself in. The final kind of category that I wanted to talk about, and is possibly the most important, as I referenced earlier, to overcoming challenges and just making the most of your internship generally, is mentorship. I can't stress enough the difference that having a mentor makes in your life as an intern. And that's because not only can they help you and show you, but I don't think I would learn half of what I learn had I not been able to facilitate a mentor-mentee relationship with those that I have it with. It is incredibly rewarding and special, and will probably be one of the most worthwhile relationships you ever have in your life. And I know it is for me. I definitely don't know what I would do without my mentors. They help me with all kinds of stuff, even that aren't related to the firm, questions I have, problems that I'm having. Really that relationship can help you more than you would ever imagine. And so it's really important that you find a mentor that you trust and that you vibe with and all those different things, because it can help you overcome challenges in more than just the firm, definitely the firm, but in beyond that as well, which can really help you just emotionally and all those different things. They provide guidance, they provide support, they provide perspective. All of those different things are really important because it festers in you. And if you only have your perspective and you don't have any guidance, that's a really, anything is hard to navigate that way, especially when you're inexperienced. And so having a mentor provides all of those layers for you, and whatever you choose to do with them is up to you. But usually if someone cares about you and they have experience and they are wise and they're able to guide you based on their experience, which oftentimes is many years of experience, usually they're pointing you in the right direction. And that can be really helpful, because without it, you may not have ever gone in that direction. So I know that probably would have been my experience. How do you seek help from your mentor? Sometimes that can be hard, especially if you really value your mentor. You don't want them to see you in any way but awesome and all those different things, because it can be vulnerable to seek help from your mentor. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a really easy thing to do in a really easy relationship. Like I'd categorize mine as pretty easy. Like I never think that my mentor is going to see me differently because I'm struggling with something, as long as I come to them and I'm truthful and I'm open and I'm honest and I'm upfront about it. But it can be a vulnerable thing and a hard thing to do, especially if that's not something that just comes innate to you, is asking for help, which to a lot of people and to me even is not. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So again, you need to be forward and communicate with your mentor. That's the first step. Like, explain what's going on, be forward. They're not going to judge you for it. They're literally there to help you. That's the whole definition of what a mentor is. They shouldn't pass on any judgment to you. You should, and if they do, you should pick a different mentor, because that's not what mentorship is about. And so effectively communicate that, be forward with it, and seek that help in the beginning. That's that first step. listen actively to what they have to say about it and be open. I mean, sometimes that can be hard when you're in the middle of a stressful situation, or you feel really bogged down or really closed in or foggy or just, overwhelmed by whatever's happening. But make sure that you're listening actively to what they have to say, the perspective that they're giving, and be really open to the feedback that they have. I mean, you're not asking them for no reason. And so obviously you're asking them because you believe in their opinion and really trust them. And so be really open and receptive to that feedback, because they're probably right, to be honest with you. I mean, I've never had a time when mine wasn't right. And maybe that wouldn't be the case for you, but I'd say that likely if you've chosen that mentor, it's for a reason, and so you should trust them. Follow through. I think that that's something that's important, like actually then go and take that feedback and apply it to your situation. I mean, obviously, what's the whole point of wasting your mentor's time and talking to them about something if you then don't go and fix whatever situation you're in? The whole point they're giving you feedback, the whole point that they're helping you is to help your situation be better so that you can move on. And if you don't take that action or make that step, then it's kind of all for nothing. And it's also probably still a very negative thing in your life, no matter what it is. So follow through based on that guidance that they give you. And finally, don't forget to thank your mentor. I think that that's something that people don't do a lot. And I find that sad, because your mentor is giving you their time. Time is money, especially in the legal world. And so their help and guidance, if it's valuable to you, you should be authentic about that value and thank them for it. I think that usually goes a long way in that mentor-mentee relationship. All right, guys, well, that is the end of this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in to episode 3 of the Legal Intern Diaries, Montana edition. Again, I'm Jaden Bede, and be on the lookout for next week's episode. Again, you can find those episodes on most platforms, can take you right to it, but I would encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications on YouTube, and to check out my website at www.406legalinternships.com. There you can find any of the content that I'm posting about me, information, and also a platform for you to be able to contact me with your questions and any guidance that you think I could be helpful in giving. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.